Welcome, guys, to an episode of the Evolution Podcast. Today, I've got a special guest for you. So, we're going to be discussing the supernatural. I don't know if you like superstitious or if that's something, but today you're really going to want to tune in because I have a special guest. She's an expert in this, and she's going to be basically taking us through the flow of things and helping us understand a little bit more about what we don't know about the unknown. So, Laura, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. I'm Laura West. I am a registered nurse, psychic medium, author, podcast host, all that good stuff.
Okay, all right. So let's take it from the origin story. So, how your nurse? I mean, what was like the special nurse, like surgical or
Yeah, like ambulatory, so outpatient, it's like primary care, family medicine has been my specialty for the last 10 plus years.
and how long have you? 10 years. Jeez, that's a long time. I'm pretty
Uh,
sure. So my sister is a nurse,
ah,
and she told me, obviously, just for context, this was a while back, and she had a new baby that was sick that was born, and she had to give the baby, like the drip. Is it the drip
like
stuff?
IV.
I'm not. Yeah, an IV. Yeah, that stuff. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that world, but she ended up making a mistake in giving the wrong medication, and apparently that's common.
It's like like my biggest fear. But yeah, it does happen because we're human. But luckily, I feel like in the well, at least where I've worked in the organizations that I've worked for, when you report those things, the purpose of reporting those things is so that how can we prevent that from happening again? So, yeah, a lot of those mistakes, they can happen. It's just human error, but we do get trained to really check, double check, triple check when it
Yeah.
comes to giving medications. But yeah, it's scary.
So what's the worst like case of like you've ever seen in the hospital? Someone checks in like.
Well, so it's funny that you mentioned that your sister worked with babies because when I worked in the hospital before I went to the clinic, I worked in labor and delivery. That was my first job. So I was a new nurse and new to a department and new to a specialty. So there were a lot of things that I got to see and do for the first time. But I'll never forget. It wasn't my patient, but I'll never forget this couple who had lost their couple situations actually. One where they had lost their baby, they had to deliver really
Mm.
early, so early that the baby wouldn't survive even in an incubator. So that was really heart-wrenching to go through that with them. There was another case where, um, the what she had twins. One of the twins had passed away inside, and so they had to deliver the other one via C-section. So there's a lot of things that, you do get to see, but then the majority of the time, at least for me, it was very lovely and amazing miracles that you get to experience at work, and it actually made me not afraid of having children myself, so that was kind of an interesting
S-
twist to
So
that.
what made you decide, growing up, like, hey, I want to be a nurse?
Yeah. So I actually didn't want to be a nurse at first, I wanted to be a physician.
Right.
I wanted to go to medical school, I wanted to do all that, because I was inspired by the illness and the passing of my paternal grandmother when I was in high school. She ended up dying from cancer, so I was like, "I wanna be a surgical oncologist and help find a cure for cancer and get it out of people." So that was what I wanted to do for a long time, and then I was in college, and then I started taking, like, organic chemistry and all these classes, and I was like, "Oh, is this really what I wanna do? Do I want to be on call all the time?" Like, I wanted to have a family, I wanted to have a life outside of my career, so to me, nursing seemed like the better fit to be able to still have my foot in the medical field, but then also to have more of a work-life balance, and it's just been an amazing balance and a great call that I made all those years ago, so I'm really grateful that I did.
10 years. So now, did it motivate you? Do you have kids now?
Yeah, I do. I have 2 kids. I have 2 daughters. And yeah, I knew what to expect when it came to having my own, and I had very uneventful labors and uneventful deliveries
Mm.
and very uneventful healing. So it was just a very lucky and wonderful experience that I had twice.
Wow, wow, that's good, good. So,
Yeah.
which brings me to which is which I was personally fascinated when I was, doing the research and coming into, so you registered nurse, still a registered nurse, and
Mhm.
go into being a sidekick. So how did that happen? Was it like you had a dream and then all of a sudden you just
Yeah. Like, "Yeah, I wanna do this. Why not?" It's funny, because, it was also my paternal grandmother, the one whom I found the motivation through her illness to want to go into the medical field, that I realized played a really huge part in me recognizing that a lot of my experiences from childhood to now set me up to really do mediumship. So, I had it started with dream visitations with her, with other spiritual entities like my spirit guides, even Jesus, which was crazy and amazing. But she, came the night that she passed. I had a dream about her before I even knew that she passed, that she came into my dream and she looked amazing, radiant, glowing. And I said, "Grandma, you're all better." And I had just seen her the day before in hospice, a ventilator breathing for her. She was comatose, just wasn't her. So then the next day, we found out after I had that dream that she had passed during the night. And so that stuck with me. I knew that was a dream visitation. How I knew that, I don't know at that time, but it's stuck with me since. And so I had a lot of things happen in my life, mediumship wise, where a lot of past loved ones or family members of those who have passed would visit me in my dreams all the way up until recently, even now. And so in around 2019, I started meditating for the first time.
mm,
And it was then when things really started to pick up for me. Right before the pandemic, I started really wanting to hone into my intuition, which to me at the time meant, oh, that just I want to know what it feels like for me when I'm not supposed to do something. Well, little did I know the Pandora's box that I was opening up when I said I wanted to hone into my intuition, meaning, oh my gosh, I'm connecting to spirit. That was my route. It's not for everybody, but that was my route. And so it led me to channel writing and connecting with my guides that way and past loved ones that way. And then me dabbling into mediumship because I wanted to be awake and more in control of when I had these visitations from people who have passed versus just in my dreams at random. And so I started practicing and working on that, and it worked, and so I continued to do that for other people, for myself, and it was then that I realized, okay, this is why I had all these experiences leading up to this that made me realize, oh, I was pretty much being prepared for me finally accepting that I could do this without having to be in that dream state.
okay, this is okay. So there's a lot to unpack there. I am in a position in which I'm all right. So let's backtrack. A couple statements past. So you talk about dream visitation,
Mhm.
right? You said your grandma, may her soul rest in peace. Your paternal mother. You talk about she passed away, and then you saw that in a dream. Now I'm gonna play a position of how do you know that was not just your state of mind where you were at, panic or anxiety or something that actually manifested that? How do you know it was actually like a spirit visitation?
Yeah, I mean, such a great question. But for me, it was because of my intuition. I just knew. I have had dreams with her since, and I feel like some of them were maybe just either fleeting visitations or just me having a dream. But the ones that really stick with me, the ones where I wake up the next day and I'm like, wow, like that happened. There was a reason for that. There was a message in that. That's how I know, and I feel like perhaps it's just more of an intuitive knowing when it comes to that. It's interesting because even at the time when intuitively I felt like that was from her, I hadn't delved into the world of spirituality yet. I knew that our souls went on. I had understanding in that sense because I did go to church and I did go to synagogue. I was brought up in a Jewish and a Christian household. So I did already know that life continued on after death, but I didn't really have any sort of guidance or experience with dream visitations, but I just knew at that time. So I feel like intuitively is how I knew, and the fact that it stuck with me, the fact that when I woke up, I just again intuitively knew that that's what it was. That's how I know cuz I will have dreams just of random things that may include my grandmother, it may include other loved ones, and it may feel more of like a whimsical or wishful sort of dream, or maybe there is a message in there. But then there are the times where I get these really profound dreams and I can't disregard them for anything other than a visitation. So I feel like for me, it's more of an intuitive knowing that that's what it is. Unfortunately, there's no other way to sort of explain it.
No, 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 no. I get, and I think, but this is my follow-up question to that then.
Sure.
So, isn't it because I'm thinking about from a perspective of someone who loses a loved one, right?
Hmm.
And we're all of this notion that hey, once they pass away, they move on to the next life. So, what is the reason why spirit will go in a position in which they do a visitation? Is it like a final goodbye? Is it like hey, I know you ate the last ice cream in the fridge? Like, what is the what's that situation? And I have another follow-up question to that as well.
Okay, okay. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It could just be like, I would never say a final goodbye because they're always there, and whenever we need them, they'll come around. But it's definitely like a hello. It could be a message. So, for instance, example. So when my grandmother came and showed herself that she was all better, that to me was like, remember me this way, not how you saw me lying in the hospice bed. It was just like a in that case like a goodbye. But I will say she has visited me many times since then and has been very paramount in my spiritual journey. I've had other messages come through of people who have passed. I had one father of a friend who asked me to pass along that his daughter get a blood test done, to check her blood for, I think it was for diabetes or something. And I was like, oh, okay. So sometimes it's just like a message like that. But why do they come and visit us? To let us know that they're okay and that they're still around. It can be from what I picked up in my studies and in doing readings and things, it could be a bit frustrating to be in that sort of spirit energetic body and be there with your loved one, but them not knowing that you're there. Can you imagine like being in the space and everyone ignoring you? And you're like, but I'm here, but they're crying over you. You're like, but I'm here, I'm fine. So it's just a nice way for our logical brains to be out of the way when it comes to being in a dream state. Somehow it's just easier for them to come through and say hi.
Okay, this I have my head is going. I have so many questions right now.
No, it's
So,
fine.
okay, so I have two questions, two-part questions. So the
Sure.
first question being, how do you know is there a good and a bad spirit?
Ah, gosh, that's such a good question. I will say that I am actually still myself trying to figure that out because I hear so many different things. I can tell you that if we want to use good and bad, there's good energy and then there's bad energy. So, like, for instance, if you walk into a space and you're like, oh, I just don't like the way it feels in here. And then you maybe learn later that, oh, there was maybe a lot of abuse that happened in that space, or somebody was brutally murdered in that space, and it just feels really icky and yucky. So that's sort of the residual energy of that. And then, of course, there's the good energy as well. So is there good spirit, bad spirit? Some people say yes, some people say no. I'm still on the fence.
Interesting. So I have a story to that, and I'm going to ask
Yeah.
my follow-up question. So are you familiar with The Office, the movie?
Like the TV show?
Yeah, yeah, the TV show, the
I
movie.
love that show. Well,
Okay.
Office Space?
No, no, Office, the movie.
Oh,
The
I don't
show,
know
the
that
show,
show.
the show, the show,
The
not the
show. Oh,
movie.
yes,
I
I
kept
love
saying
that
movie.
show.
Yeah, the show. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh
Um,
my gosh, did they make a movie?"
yeah, yeah. No, I know they made a movie, but the show was shot in Scranton, Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
So it was Sean Scranton, and then there was a hotel there. I'm not gonna say anything because then again, you say names next to it, like, oh, why are you talking? But there was a hotel there that used to be a train station where during I can't remember one of the wars, they would bring the bodies and they would put the bodies there. So that's kind of like the hotel was like a morgue, and then they built a hotel on it. So I remember I stayed there. This was probably maybe 6 years ago. I was at the hotel, and we get into the hotel. We go on over to teammates, and they're like, "Do you know this hotel has some stuff going on?" I'm like, "Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that now. Don't tell me that." And they're like this place. So we get to the hotel, and they're like, "Whatever you do, don't get the sixth floor." It's like, okay. All right, don't get the sixth floor. I was like, okay, I don't want to be here. I can get my own hotel. So we get in a hotel, and then all of us are like, yeah, we're not sleeping here. Let's all meet downstairs. So we all meet downstairs, and then one of the team members, she was talking. She was like, well, I had stayed here a few months back, and I had she was on the seventh floor, eighth floor, whatever it is. Oh no, she was on the third floor, and she pressed one of the buttons, and the door closed, and the sixth floor just lit up, right, all by itself. And then the door opened. So the sixth floor, it lit up, and then the door opened. And she's like, okay, so she pressed the floor again, and then the door closed, and then the sixth floor illuminated again. And then it opened again. She's like, well, I get the message. And then she gets out, and she's like, yeah, I'm not taking the elevator, I'm walking, because she was traumatized. But another person said he was in the fifth floor, and he could just hear like run-ins up and down the sixth floor, but there was no one there because he went downstairs and like, hey guys, you got to stop the kids. And like, well, that floor is completely empty. So in that situation, then is that necessary? Because I'm just personally very curious, because I need someone like you, because you're the expert here. If you can explain, like, what is that phenomenon? What is that?
Yeah. So, okay. So it could be several things. It could be residual energy of whatever was happening there.
Okay.
Um, I do feel like that ghosts do exist. I know that people can have the choice to stick around for whatever reason, and not cross over completely and just sort of be in that in between space. Uh, I have heard that if that happens, it's not for usually as long as we think. So for instance, if you like go to a place that was built 200 years ago and they say it's haunted from people who lived there 200 years ago, maybe time is relative, but usually spirits don't stay that long from my research and my readings and things like that. So it could be a number of things. It could be residual energy again, or it could be that there really is spirit activity happening in there. Obviously, without being there, I can't say exactly, but sometimes too, and I've heard this is very I think this is interesting, but if enough people also believe something, you put a lot of energy and belief into something, it can start to manifest. For instance, I mean, again, I'm still on the fence myself, but for instance, like the Loch Ness monster in
Mm-hmm.
Scotland, like that people will have experiences of seeing a Loch Ness monster because enough people believe that there's a Loch Ness monster and it sort of manifests itself. So, it could be so many different reasons why those phenomena are occurring. As far as that for your poor colleague, that would
Okay,
scare
so
me too.
yeah, no, I mean, what ended up happening was we ended up just staying at the bar till it closed, and we're like, we're not going in, because we ended up, just imagine like 4 or 5 drunk people just walking in, and we look at there, and then we're like, wait, is that a bird? And then we're like, wait, why is a bird up there at 2 in the morning? And we're like, wait, no, we're not going. And then it ended up being to the point where we were like, okay, so we stayed up for like till like 4 in the morning, right? So like literally just outside in the cold, the four, and we finally were like, all right, we gotta sleep. The sun's gonna come up in 3 hours. So we walk up the stairs, and we basically walk each other to each person's room and make sure that they get in your room, because she didn't want to take the elevator. So we walked up the stairs. So imagine going 6 floors. And then I was the only one that had to walk by myself
I was wondering
to
who
my
that
own
person
room,
was.
because there's always that one person, right? Walk everybody
Yeah.
else like, wait, then I had to be the only one. And I remember I told a friend of mine, and she's like, yep. And it's just a weird joke. She goes, yeah, she's like, you look like the guy in the movie that's the first to go. So unfortunately, so I was like, that's not nice. That's not nice. But but grateful to God, I'm still
That's
here.
hilarious.
So, but that brings my next point here, which is, so why would a spirit, for instance, right? Because I believe we all have energy. Why would a spirit choose not to move to the afterlife? Like I didn't even know it was a choice. It's like, hey, you have option A, you can go to heaven. Option B, you can go to hell. Option C, you can just stay here and chill and pick your ex girlfriend and torment her, which is so. So why would they choose not
Oh.
to?
Yeah. Okay. So from what I've heard, because obviously I don't recall being in that situation myself, but from what I have heard is that okay. So first of all, umbrella, we all have free will, free choice. So
Hmm.
being here was our choice. What we do here is our choice. Do we make good choices and bad choices? Yes. But being here, it's all free will. That includes when we cross over and what happens there. So things that might keep people from crossing over. I have found that, and I will say I have done some crossing over work myself, meaning that I have friends who will say, kind of like the hotel, like, "Oh, weird stuff's happening here. Can you kind of tap in and see what's going on?" And there are times where I do come across either spirit or residual energy, and I help and I work with them to help cross them over. And a lot of the times, what I have found in those instances is that a lot of what we call like a low vibrational emotions kept them in fear, hate, guilt, those sorts of emotions kind of cloud. They seem to cloud that process of crossing over. Uh, Guilt, for instance, like they don't deserve to cross over. I don't believe that there is an actual hell. I believe that there is only the other side and it's loving. Where we are right now on planet Earth would be maybe the closest thing that we get to hell because it's crazy and there's a lot of bad stuff, a lot of good stuff too, but a lot of bad
Hmm.
stuff here too. So, a lot of the times I found that it's either like related to fear or guilt. And then you hear things about people having attachments to items and stuff. I mean, I'm sure that's possible. What I've learned with the spirit world, is that there's no black and white. There's no it's so limitless, so I can't just say it's only like this or it's only like that, because then something will come up and it'll throw me for a loop and I realize I know nothing. So from my experience, it could be a lot of those low vibrational emotions, around it. And some people a lot of souls, people will be in similar situations and cross over no problem. So I think it's very individual.
Interesting. So then my question goes. This is the question I have then. The concept of hell and heaven stands as a way in which people on earth here in as we live right now and talking can be able to, how would I call it? So you said you grew up in a Christian Catholic slash Jewish
Yeah,
household.
Christian just uh-huh.
So, growing up, your parents would tell you like, hey, if you don't behave yourself, you're gonna go to hell. So it's kind of like
Luckily,
a,
mine didn't, but yes, I know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
yours did it, but mine was, it was a threat every time. It was like, well, if
Jeez.
kids that don't eat their food go to hell. I'm like, what? So but it was a way to basically kind of justify, it was a way to justify like, well, I'm a good person, so as a good person, I can go to heaven, right? So the concept of heaven and hell was more of a deterrence from, being bad. So
Mm,
which brings me to my question. So if the afterlife is good and is nice, then that means what you're saying is, I'm just saying hypothetically, if let's say somebody commits genocide,
mm,
right, and somebody who was a great and loving parent, they all go to the same place.
mm. That can be a really hard pill to swallow. So again, I'm going based on my studies. And a lot of what I gather my information from is from this one psychologist. I'm pretty sure psychologist, Dr. Michael Newton. He wrote these amazing books, Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. And I like it because he took a very unbiased approach when it came to these case studies, like thousands of case studies that he compiled into this book and found a lot of similarities and things like that. It was really, really, really fascinating for me. It could be life changing. And he talks about that. He talks about, well, what about people like Hitler, for instance, who did terrible, terrible things, and he ends up over there. So anyway, so from what I hear about the other side is that again, there's choice. There, we review our life and how it went, and we can review it through the eyes of those that we affected, good and bad. We feel their emotion from how we affected them. Again, good and bad. And so for someone like Hitler, I'm just going to use him as an example because I feel like, he's sort of the epitome of evil in many of our eyes. He negatively affected millions of lives. And so imagine how long that life review must last. Because not only the people who were maybe in concentration camps, but then it's the family members of those, and it just, I mean, the whole world basically. He has to view, uh, and then there's a lot of space there for healing as well. So healing the soul. I have also heard that if there are some souls who are just too far gone, like they're so fractured, their energy is so fractured and so what's the word? Tainted, I suppose, that it's almost like they're beyond healing, beyond repair,
Mhm.
and they may just get absorbed back into source energy, God energy, whatever we want to call it, and sort of not incarnate again or reincarnate again. So, I mean, I've
So
I've heard that too.
So what you're saying is we all do pretty much reincarnate. So basically, me and
Oh
you,
yeah,
and because okay, so I'm curious. This is where I'm very fascinated, and I think your point, because I there's a part of me that don't believe in it, and there's also another part of me
sure.
that's like that believes in it. So the fear of heights,
Ah,
right?
yes.
Like just like right now, you're standing on the 20th floor of a building. For instance, my friend has a place in Miami, and are you familiar with Miami area, Brickell?
Just I've been there once.
Okay, so downtown it's kind of like the bougie part of Miami. It's called Brickell, and he stays on I think it was the 50th or 55th floor, something like that.
Jeez.
And so we're looking outside, and I look down. I go and I look down, because you stand in the balcony and you're trying to look like, yeah, I'm not scared of this. Oh my god, what do you mean? And I look down and I look at the balcony, and I was like, oh, and I just stepped back a little bit. I was like, yeah, yeah, no, man, no. But then instantly in that point of my, but I was like, I don't have a fear of heights. It's not a fear of heights. It's a fear of falling, right? So because
Yeah.
someone else like, is it a fear of heights? Because you right now we could be, you could be on the 20th floor of a building looking down, but because you have a window protecting you, you're not scared of looking
It's
down. You're
true.
like, oh, that's like nice. But if there was no window and you're looking down
Mhm.
now your brain goes, well, listen, be careful, my friend, because you might be you know. So then I was like thinking about it. So I look at my 5-year-old son, and he's also has the same thing too. He's like, yeah, no, I'm not stepping in front now. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then I was like, wait. I was like, when did you? I was like, why are we so afraid of something that's never happened to us? And then there's a part of me that was like, maybe we're all connected, or in a position, maybe we've or deja vu. So, but what is the evidence to prove? This is my evidence, basically, just saying I'm kind of on the same boat, but I've got like one foot in, and I've got like one foot out. What's the evidence to support the fact that support the we're reincarnated?
Yeah, great question. So, one, I think some of that is also deciphering, is it just our natural instinct to survive and live, right? So there's that,
Hmm.
because I also have the same fear as well. So I totally understand that falling thing. And I think many people do. So, a lot of the evidence is really circumstantial, obviously. Like, there's no way to get sort of that hard proof other than just the thousands and thousands of stories of people out there. Was listening to this podcast, which is really great. Can I share the name of it here?
Absolutely, feel free to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's called, the Past Lives Podcast, and I've actually been a guest on there too, which is really cool, but before that, I was an avid listener, and he always had people come on. I mean, it's just fascinating. People come on and talk about when they had, like, near-death experiences, and they're on the other
Hmm.
side, what they saw, the messages, etcetera. He would also have people come on, talk about reincarnation, and there was one person who compiled a book of, children's stories of being reincarnated, because children are so close to having just recently come into this life, and their brains aren't as can I use the word tainted, I suppose,
Mm.
by everyday life like us adults are. So there's more of an innocence, a pureness, a connection with the other side. So to hear these kids who would have no knowledge of something um, talk about things. And I do want to say that then you can get evidence, maybe a little bit more concrete evidence once you are able to validate these stories and also know and trust that okay, there's no way that this kid would know about this. There's no way that this person would know such details that were able to be proven. So that would be a way to prove I believe reincarnation other than just having a knowing that is true.
Okay, so then let's see if we let's say we're all reincarnated, right? We
Mhm.
we existed in a past life. Then how does that explain? And then the bad people don't reincarnate. So then okay, so then that kind of has the I'm going to say the argument because someone's watching this and it's like, well, 10 minutes prior, you guys were talking about moving to the next life. So if we're moving to the next life and then we're reincarnating, which one is it?
Ah, yeah. So first of all, bad people they can reincarnate, quote unquote bad people can reincarnate as well. But so I think we have to remember that spirit world is not as black and white as we may look at things here in this physical
Hmm.
world. So, one thing to consider is that we don't part of how do I say this? I mean, it's going to sound out there, but our not all of our soul is going to come into a life. Part of our soul also stays on the other side. Some people call it higher self, whatever. So we don't come in with all of our soul. So we could be doing multiple things at once, as hard as that may be for us to fathom being in these finite physical bodies. But so I still communicate with my grandmother, for instance, and she passed, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, maybe a little longer. Does that mean that she has not reincarnated? No, she could very well have reincarnated, but I could be communicating with her spirit that's still on the other side. So it can be very much more convoluted than we may realize as far as that goes. I will say that I do want to share that I'm not here to try to convince anybody or change anybody's mind. Maybe just here to, you know, share some truth that I have learned, knowledge that I have learned. And I always like to share that if it resonates, great, look into it more. If it doesn't resonate, that's fine. It's not for you. It doesn't mean that, you're a bad person or that one of us is right, one of us is wrong. It's just we have to take things as they feel right to us. I'm a huge proponent component of
Okay.
of intuition. So,
So then this is also where I'm kind of curious. Then what is the soul?
hmm, yeah, it's who we are. It's we sparked from God. We sparked from God, and from there we have had many lifetimes of these experiences. Our body is not our soul. It's really interesting. I was reading Sylvia Brown. That's when I had sort of spiritual awakening number one, is what I call it, back 20 something years ago. And she said what she learned. She was this famous psychic medium, and she said our souls are actually live about, I don't know, 3 inches or so above our heads, which I thought
Mm.
was kind of interesting. But our soul is the essence of who we are. It's what continues to go on and lives and is very easily crossing over to the other side. It's what connects us to every other person out there. And gosh, I don't know. It's just it's finite. It's love. Some of us may disregard it, and some of us may be very connected to it. So it's just the essence, I suppose, of who we are.
Interesting. And then, can this is another question.
Yeah.
Have you seen the show Supernatural?
I have not, but is it on Netflix?
No, no, it's not. It's. I think it might be on. I think it might be on Netflix. But there's a part of the soul because in the show they talk about the soul. It's this bright light and all that stuff. But that's just Hollywood.
Yeah.
But can the soul be corrupted? And can the soul be corrupted? And then another thing, because you see in Hollywood and they say, oh, this person sold your soul. Can they, can the soul be corrupted? And can the soul be sold?
Okay, I love it. Okay, so first of all, the soul can be yeah, maybe that's the word I was looking for earlier when we were talking about um, evil people. Corrupted perhaps is the word when I use the word tainted. So it can be damaged. It could sort of need repair, the same thing. And in need of healing. So in that sense, yes, I suppose. And then, when we're here in the physical, we're much, we've got our humanness to us, and that can get in the way of what it is that we're here to do, which is to do good, um, love others, do good, go home. So the humanness can, I guess, corrupt us and get in the way of that, where we allow in some of these more low vibrational emotions like hate and guilt and all that sort of stuff. Can we sell our soul? I mean, I I I'll be honest, I hadn't thought of it in that level. I know that sometimes I'll joke with my husband like, "Oh, yep, I know what they did. They sold their soul because, they're doing bad things or, whatever." Like, we joke about stuff like that. But can the soul actually be sold? I'm getting a no, with that. But, I think that we can maybe make choices that aren't in our soul's best interest.
Interesting. But in the sense is too, you see when you have, and this still goes back to Hollywood, where you see someone who was underperforming, all of a sudden, boom, now
Mm.
this person is like, and then, 10, 15 years go by later, and then next, like, oh, mysteriously, this actor's done, right? They're gone. And then you're like, what happened? So I'm
Mhm.
still in that position, but I guess we'll leave that for because
We
that's a
should leave
very
that.
that's a very interesting topic here. But you mentioned this mentioned something about the soul team, right? Everyone's surrounded
Uh,
by a soul team, right? So explain a little bit what a soul team is, and so for the audience who is not familiar with, because I am not familiar with what it is entirely.
yeah, of course. So we all have soul teams, and soul teams can be made up of any loving entities on the other side. So, for instance, spirit guides, angels, ancestors, past loved ones. For some, it could be extraterrestrials, even. It's just limitless. We've got animal guides, all sorts, ascended masters, which would include like Jesus and Buddha. And then, of course, we've got God or source, however you want to call that amazing energy. And so for me, I like the term soul team because I like to sort of envelop all of those in one. It can
Hmm.
be very daunting to be here in the physical and say, gosh, I don't know which one I'm supposed to work with. I don't know which one I'm supposed to call to help me with this or that. So by using that umbrella term of soul team, it just takes the guesswork and the stress out of it because it shouldn't be stressful working with spirit. And I use also the word spirit as an umbrella term as well. It shouldn't be stressful. So, if you can just call for your soul team, they'll come and help you. Let them decide who needs to, which energy needs to help you with whatever it is that you're looking for. So that's why I like to use the word soul team to encompass all of those loving energies that are there to help you, to help me, and everyone else.
Okay, I'm gonna push back. This is not just me, but this is just basically from, because there's a lot of we have a wide range of audiences, and not everyone is familiar per se. So let's say someone is listening to this and it's like, no, I'm not gonna. The only soul I need is Jesus. I don't need anything else. No, I don't need. So explain a little bit, because there's a part of some I'm thinking from a listener's mind where they're going, well, because 5,000 years previously, some people might say that concept might be witchcraft. Example. And I'm
Sure.
not saying this is, but this is five. But then again, there's still a lot of people that still are adept to that mindset,
Yes, there are.
right? So now, how would somebody go? Okay, this is, and what is the? I won't even say convincing, but what is the one open thing where people can be like, oh, this is not a concept of this, but this is this. Like, what's if you get the point I'm trying to make there?
I think that, the labels that we instill on these entities
Hmm.
from, the other side are for us. And so I'm not here to take away, you know, somebody who only wants to work with Jesus, only wants to work with Buddha or, one or the other or whatever. It's not for me to do. I really believe that everybody has to be on their own spiritual journey when it comes to feeling what is right for them. For those that this resonates with, then, then I hope that this provides some guidance to them as to, all the love and support that they have available to them. And for those that it doesn't resonate for, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not here to convince anybody. And I work very closely with Jesus myself. So I can appreciate others who do as well. But a lot of the times I think we just give them these names and labels for us. They could be any energy.
Okay, so you work closely with Jesus. Can you expand on that? Because
Yeah.
that would mean you see him. That would mean he talks to you. That would mean he shows up and like, hey, Laura, hi, how's it going today? It's a Monday. So like that, like
Yeah. So, well, a couple things. I, the first time that I had a very brief conversation with him was when I was a teenager and he came to visit me in a dream. And he came arm in arm with this guy who he looked very buff and but what's funny is I just saw the arm and it was like grayed out. So there was no color to the arm that he was arm in arm with, but Jesus was in full color. And it's funny cuz when I first saw him, I thought, "Oh my gosh, he's a lot shorter than I thought he was." But he was in full color, and they were both walking towards me through this sort of ethereal cloud, sort of that that cloud that everybody talks about, the tunnel. And he was wearing like a blue, white sort of toga kind of outfit, very quintessential looking Jesus that you would see like in the Renaissance paintings. And I think he presented himself that way so I would recognize him as Jesus. And it the interesting thing about the timing of this dream was at the time I was going to, a Christian church, and I was just in that space of, am I Christian? Am I Jewish? Like, what is it that which direction am I going? What feels good? And so during that time, I had this dream with Jesus, and he just asked me one thing. He just asked me to spread his word. That was all he said. And I'm like, oh gosh, like, am I supposed to evangelize? Like, I don't even know where I stand in all of this yet. And so I told him, I said, I'll try. And that was enough for him because then they left back through that tunnel and then they were gone. That part of the dream was over. And so for a long time, I thought about, well, gosh, what does he mean by spreading his word? Does that mean I'm going to feel more Christian? I just kind of waited to see where I felt my heart would lead me. And so so soon after that, I started reading books about spirituality and I was like, this feels right to me, but where does me spreading the word come in with this? And it was over the years, whenever I would go back to that dream, that I realized that the word that I meant to spread is the word of love. Jesus was love. And so that's where that comes in. And Jesus is very accessible to all of us and any of us who want to connect with him. Just like any other entity on the other side, he's very much right there with you. I've had dreams again with him and with God, which have been really, really cool and profound and helpful. So, I don't, if I wanted to, I could sit here and have a conversation with him. People do it all the time when they pray. But it also is important to meditate and listen and, open yourself up to whoever comes in with a message for you. It could be Jesus, it could be any other of the loving entities on the other side. But I do feel that I have a very close relationship with him, more than I ever could have obtained through any religion.
Interesting. Okay. So which brings me to this because as we wrap up, and I'm very curious about this. So
Sure.
the concept of zodiac signs, right? You know
Oh,
how I mean, obviously you're married, and back in the day, everyone's like, oh, well, that's a Sagittarius. Do not. Or, oh, yeah, that's a
yeah,
Pisces. You know what they say about Pisces? Or like, well, your girlfriend is an Aries? Oh, son, listen, let me tell you, you
that's
don't want to
funny.
mess with Aries. So, with the concept of zodiac signs, do they actually relate with people? Like, is there proof to it, or is it just hokey pokey?
Okay, so, well, first, let me say I'm not an astrologist, and I'm still very much fascinated by the whole world, but not yet versed by any means. But I will say that from personal experience of having readings done for me, I am always my mind is always blown. My jaw always drops. It's amazing how accurate the information is just from date of birth, time of birth, place of birth. It's just amazing. And I've had several astrologists on my podcast as well who will talk about astrology and talk about that whole thing and the amount of study that goes into it. I mean, it goes back years, like thousands of years. I mean, long time. It goes back a long time. This whole concept of zodiac signs, and so I think if you're open minded to it, you can get a lot of really good information about it. Some of it I feel like could be generalized. Some of it may fit for some people, some of it not. But it's more than just what your horoscope is. That would be considered your sun sign. So we all most of us know what our sun sign is. If you know when you were born, but that there's so much more involved in that. There's like a moon sign and a rising sign and all these different house placements. It's just really, really involved. It's such what's the word I'm looking for? Like a specialty. It's such an art and science all on its own. It's fascinating. I venture anybody to at least be open to a reading just to see what information can come, because it should only be helpful and good information.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I remember this was a while back. I was dating this girl, and I told this. She's a friend of mine. I was like, hey, you know, this is the person. And she's like, hmm. You're an Aries, okay? And she's a Pisces. So let's fire and water. Fire and water does not mean. And then she's like, "What's your moon sign?" I was like, "What do you mean? I don't know. What's your?" Or she's like, and then she's like, When were you born? I need to know. What was the place? What's the long to your life? I was like, okay, hold on. That's a little too much for me, but I guess
Yeah.
that's a conversation. But as we wrap up here, I've got a series of three. We call them dumb fun questions, right?
Sure.
We call them fun questions because we had a guest say she said those questions are not dumb, so we'll call them fun questions. So the first question is there a special diet that you have to keep through to be able to maintain your psychic abilities?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll speak for myself. But when I am ready to do a reading for somebody, I don't like to have a full stomach at all. So, I will actually, because I do tend to do my readings in the morning, I'll wait to eat until afterwards, so that I'm not, I don't know, maybe so my body is not focused on that. And then hydration as well, just to not have like a headache or anything that can sort of be distracting during the reading. Because when you're doing a reading for somebody, you really are putting, just like when you meditate, you focus on your breathing. Well, you're focusing on the other side. And so anything can come and sort of interrupt that if allowed. And so you try to set yourself up for success so that you can give the best reading for your client or your sitter. And so you just try to make your body as comfortable and as tip top as it can be. So really not overeating. I've started doing what's called intuitive eating as well, where I eat only when I'm hungry, stop when I'm not hungry anymore. So that seems to really help as well, to just not feel sluggish and fatigued.
Interesting. Okay. And then the
Yeah.
second question is, do you use your psychic abilities to be able to predict the lottery numbers or sporting events? Because if that is, then we need to talk about,
I know. So I will be honest, I have okay, maybe one okay. One time, before I even called myself a psychic medium, uh, my husband was buying a lottery ticket, and he asked each of us, in our family to give him a number, and so I kinda was, like, tuned in and was like, "What number comes to me?" We didn't win, but, that was probably the one time that I was like, "Okay, let's see what number comes in." I will say it's so funny because I think that's a question that a lot of people have, like, "Well, if you're so psychic, why can't you predict this or that?" And it's like, well, that's not how it works. Like, what I'm given is only what's meant to be for the highest and best good of either myself or the person that I'm reading for. And if it's not in your highest and best good to win the lottery, which I don't know if you've ever seen any of those documentaries, the people who win the lottery, there's a lot, there's like a curse or
Yeah,
something surrounded
I
by,
know there's
right?
a, like people who win the lottery either go broke within 3 years, and some of them actually, kill themselves and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's kinda gnarly. Yeah, but anyway, that's not obviously not everybody, but anyway. So if it's not in your highest and best good to win the lottery, then, that won't come. And then for sports stuff, I imagine it's probably the same. I am by no means, bringing in all the money from gambling and stuff like that just 'cause, that's just not
Well,
where I feel it's aligned.
technically, if you won the lottery, I don't think you would tell us that you could use those abilities, because then everybody, then everyone, you'd be it's fine. Your secret's safe. It's
I
okay.
know. Well, I
Your
would
secret's
I would choose to remain anonymous regardless.
That's
Because
good.
then the
So
people will
what
come out of the woodworks.
they would, yeah, your family members would be like, well, listen, we need this, but
Yeah.
so what's next for you?
Mm. Yeah. So right now, a lot of focus and energy is in my podcast.
Okay.
So I've got this wonderful lineup of guests that I'm still going to interview, and then I will be looking for guests after that for the next round. To really explore the other side more. So, people who've had either near death experiences and have been there and can talk about what they've seen and messages they received, or those who have some sort of hypnosis session and we're able to go to the other side as well. So, really, right now, the focus is on the podcast and getting to guest on podcasts like your wonderful podcast as well. So, that's kind of just where I'm at, letting spirit take me wherever I feel intuitively guided.
I love it. I love it. So, where can people find you, your podcast, your work, if they want to get a read in, if somebody wants to, lottery numbers, wink, wink.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that, but, yeah, so my podcast is all over. It's called A Guided Life Podcast with Laura West. Again, all over, Apple, Spotify, everything. And then, my website is, www.laurawest.net.
Okay. All right, guys. So the links, if you're watching on, I always like to say this because we have this on all the platforms, and I'll be very transparent with you guys. I don't listen to Apple Podcasts, but I listen to Spotify and YouTube. So no diss against Apple, 'cause I love Apple. But if you are right now on YouTube, check the description, and in the description, the links to work with Laura. Also, to get a lot of your numbers will be in the description. And also, as well, if you're on Spotify, check the description as well. And wherever you're watching, please do not forget to share this video with one person. All we ask is you share it with one person, and then you tell the one person to share with another person, or we're going to send, some spirits out. Just kidding. That's pretty much it, guys. And it was a pleasure having you on, Laura.
Thank
And
you.
thanks again, guys, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care.